Hi, welcome to episode 284 of the Corner of Knit and Tea. My name is Laura. I'm also known as Fluffy K on Ravelry, Fluffy Kira on Instagram and Twitter. I blog over at thecornerofknitandtea.com, and that's where this episode and every episode's show notes will be. I have an Etsy shop called The Corner of Knit and Tea, where I sell my handspun yarn and my knitting patterns. And we have a Ravelry group called The Corner of Knit and Tea. Currently, we have two alongs going in the group. The first is the team for Tour de Fleece, and anyone who wants to spin and participate is welcome. The tour kicked off this past Saturday, June 27th, and will run through July 19th. You're welcome to participate with any fiber, any spinning method, and it's just about having fun. There will be some fibery prizes, but that is going on in the Ravelry group. The other thing that will kick off shortly in the Ravelry group is I have heard from several of you and you are interested in doing a Christmas in July knit along. That could be a crochet along. I am doing Christmas socks. I will open it up if you want to do more than socks, but particularly socks are kind of fun and they can be knit or crochet. I always get to December and want to knit myself a pair of Christmas socks for the holiday, and then I run out of month in December because there are so many other things going on. So a couple years ago, I decided to try and start knitting a pair of Christmas socks over the summer so that I would be ready to go come Christmas, and it has been working like a charm. So I do buy Christmas yarns each year around, when they come out in October or November, but I don't stress too much about getting them done in time. So I will talk about what I'm going to be working on for that knit along today as well. So hi, how are you? It is Monday, June 29th. It is an overcast but hot day here just outside of Kansas City, and we are surviving another week of stay at home. Our numbers are, like several parts of the country, going up. We are not in crisis mode yet, but we are still staying home and not going out much. We are looking forward to the holiday weekend just for a little time off of work, and as it turns out, our small city will have their own little fireworks show, which we can watch from our backyard, which means we have to go nowhere. So we're going to do a little bit of grilling and enjoy the outdoors in our own backyard and keep to ourselves. So that is what we're doing here. We are both healthy and we are both still working, so we are very lucky in those respects. I hope that you are doing well where you are. I know the world just keeps going on, and some days it seems so surreal to me, all the things that are happening in the outside world, and then all the things that are happening in the inside world, this little world that we've created in our home because we haven't seen anyone or left in a long time. So I hope you're doing well. I hope you are able to craft. If not, I understand, but I hope that if you are, it is bringing you comfort, and you are finding maybe something fun to craft along with over the summer, not to forget everything, but also to give yourself a break. So today, let's get started. I am drinking chai s'mores from David's Tea. It is one of the little teas that came in this 8 Sweet Treat Essentials that my husband got me for Valentine's Day. And this is a black tea with, it looks like marshmallows. Let's see what the back says. I forget. It's on the back. S'mores chai, pu'er tea, brittle pieces of sugar, hazelnut, cinnamon, sugar, marshmallows, chocolate chips, and some flavoring. So it does contain nuts, but it's a dark tea, and I am drinking it today in my Kansas Wizard of Oz mug that says, "Dear Dorothy, took the slippers, find your own way home." So Toto's heading back. So that is one of my favorite mugs about Kansas. Ooh, that is really nice. It's got a little bit of sweet to it, but it's just kind of a nice smoky tea, and I can taste a little bit of the cinnamon and a little bit of the chocolate. It's a nice spicy tea, and I know that seems a little odd for midsummer, but I'm enjoying it anyway. will get me through my afternoon of work. It's about 2 o'clock right now. I am going to talk to you for a little while, then I'm going to run outside because it is overcast today and take some photos, because an indirect light, not direct harsh sunlight, is great for photos. So I have some shawls I need to take some pictures of, and then I will go ahead and do a few more hours of work. You know, it occurs to me that I actually forgot to bring one of the shawls that I wanted to show, one of the finished objects, a shawl that I wanted to show you. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the camera and I will be right back. Okay, we're back. It's funny because I sat down and looked at everything next to me, and there are actually a lot of little things next to me, and I thought something seems to be missing. What's missing? And of course I had forgotten the largest finished object. So I was sample knitting for Zen Yarn Garden a Yagi Shawl, which is by Knit Boop, and I have mistakenly been saying that she is affiliated with Webster Street Knittery. She is not, but they did post her pattern, and I believe maybe her yarns were used in the pattern. So the Yagi Shawl is a 2-color shawl, and it is made up of various textures and patterns. So it starts with, in the corner, a little bit of garter stitch, and then you get into a mosaic section where you use both colors, and then you do a beautiful sort of box lace section. It blocked out so beautifully, and this one was a little challenging because it is patterned on both sides, so there's lots to keep track of, but it came out beautifully. And then you do another mosaic section followed by another garter section. So you are moving through your colorways. This is a long asymmetrical triangular shawl. It is more than my wingspan, so it will drape very beautifully. I knit it out of Zen Yarn Garden Superfine Fingering, which is 100% superfine merino, and it is just absolutely gorgeous and soft. It feels like there is cashmere in it, even though there is not. And the colorways that I used are the Variegated is one of their New York Met Art Walk colorways called Lydio Crocheting in the Gardens at Marley, or they abbreviate it to Lydio Crocheting, and it's got greens and blues and purples and browns. And then the purple accompanying colorway is called Moon Purple. So this is this will be available as a shawl package shortly. I need to take some photos and then actually send it off for professional photos, and then I'm sure you'll be seeing it again. So that was the first thing that I finished this week, and I am happy that it is finished. It was a fun little knit. Again, it is the Yagi Shawl by Knit Boop. That's Bojagi, and it is a free pattern on Ravelry. So if you have 2 skeins of fingering weight, you can easily knit it with that. I used up about 90 grams of both the skeins. So I had plenty left over, and those were 100 gram, 400 yard skeins. So that is done, and I do have another duo set of a Met New York Art Walk color and then a semi-solid, but I don't have a pattern for those yet. So that will be another sample knit that I'll cast on probably next week. But I will show you a few more finished objects and what I've got on the needles now. So last week I also showed you that I was knitting a hat out of leftover yarn from the shawl that I completed. This is Spirit Trail Fiberworks Zalti. Unfortunately, they are no longer in business. This was the yarn that was a sweater, and then tried to be another sweater, and then made a beautiful shawl, which I am loving. But I had probably between 250 and 300 yards left over, and I decided to knit some hats out of them. And this is the first one that is done. This is the Tamarugo hat, and again, I apologize that I do not remember the designer's name. I seem to have a block on it. And this is a free pattern on Ravelry. It calls for, I believe, worsted weight, US 6s and 8s. This is Aran weight, so it's a little bit bigger. It only comes in one size, but I thought it would be good if the recipient needed room for extra hair, I went ahead and knit it for Hat Not Hate, which is a Lion Brand's anti-bullying campaign. I've talked about that quite a bit, and so this one is ready to go. I have another hat on the needles, and it looks like I forgot to bring that one too. However, I've only done the ribbing, so I will bring that one next week, and that I believe is going to be the Cottage Hat by Dawn Landix. So, but this is the Tamarugo, and that is done. The third project that I wanted to complete this week is sort of, I joke that it's the bane of my existence because for some reason I cannot stand knitting mittens, but my little niece and nephew get a pair of mittens every year. So this week I knit a pair of maize mittens. These are by Tin Can Knits. They are from the Simple collection, and I believe they are free. If they are not, I bought the pattern long ago and I've made it multiple times before. It is a little bit of ribbing and a little bit of garter stitch and a little bit of stockinette and a little bit of reverse stockinette. So, and these mittens come in sizes, I think baby or toddler, all the way up through adult large. And I chose to make an I-cord in between the mittens, which I do for the kids, just so they don't get lost. And so the mittens are my least favorite of the set to knit, but I went ahead and knit them this week. So now I have the barley hat that I knit last week and the mittens, and then you will see I have in progress a scarf for him. So those mittens are done. So that is it. 3 finished objects for the week, but not too bad. I went ahead and updated my Stash Dash spreadsheet. I just keep a spreadsheet running for Stash Dash, which is sort of a summer challenge hosted by the Knit Girls. That's Laura and Leslie. And it is a challenge to yourself to use up as much of your stash as you can during that time, be it spinning, knitting, weaving, or however else you're going to use it. And so far I have well over 6,000 meters. So I think I might hit 10,000 meters this summer, which is really exciting. I should add that a huge bulk of that total is the blanket that I finished, the crochet blanket that I finished for Miles, and the other thing that I will note is that I am not counting my spinning yardage the way they do. They count spinning yardage the way Spinzilla used to count it, which is you count all of your singles and then all of your plied yardage. So for instance, if you spun 300 yards of a 2-ply yarn, you would get to count the 600 yards for spinning the singles and the 300 yards for plying them. I just count the finished yardage of my yarn. So I am impressed with myself because, like I said, I'm up well over 6,000 meters, and that is only partway through the summer. I still have all of July and a big chunk of August, so I'm excited about that, being very productive this summer. So let's talk about the knits that are going to be on my needles. Well, we can talk about works in progress and then the new knits that are going to be on my needles. So works in progress. The only thing I currently have literally on the needles is a scarf for Miles, and this is the third piece of the set that I am knitting him. Miles says that his favorite color is red. That's my nephew. He'll be 4 in the fall, and I am knitting him a matching winter set. I haven't knit him a scarf before, but I had started knitting Roxy a scarf when she was 4 or 5, sort of beyond the choking hazard potential, and I thought he would like a nice little set. So I knit him the barley hat, which I showed you last week, and then of course the mittens this week, and the final piece of the set is to knit him a scarf. And I am knitting the wheat scarf. This again is part of the Simple collection from Tin Can Knits. I love their patterns. They're really simple and elegant and easy to knit, and I think for him this is kind of the perfect set. So I am knitting the wheat scarf. I have made a couple modifications. I should say that this is a garter stitch scarf with a little ribbed panel. I added the same ribbed panel to his hat. And the ribbing is also on the edge of the mittens, so it really is kind of a matchy-matchy set, but I thought that would be fun. The yarn itself is Dream in Color. Classy, which is a worsted weight 100% superwash merino, 4 ounces to 250 yards. That is Dreaming Color Classy, and the colorway is Valentine. So it is this nice bright red. And for the mittens and the hat combined, I used about 175 yards of yarn. So I have a full skein, which is 250 yards, and then I have the other 75-ish or so yards from the first skein, and I am just going to use up every last inch in the scarf. I did modify the scarf a little bit, mostly because it is basically sized for adult, and I wanted it to be just a little bit narrower and probably not quite as long. I'm not sure exactly where I'll get with the yardage that I have. The pattern calls for 2 skeins of worsted weight, so approximately 440 yards. And like I said, I have 250 and 75, so about 325 yards. So what I did was I took a few stitches out of the ribbing, and I took a few stitches out of the garter stitch, and I expect the scarf will be between 5 and 6 inches wide as opposed to 8 inches wide, as in the pattern. And the pattern with the 400 yards calls for a 60-inch scarf, which is 5 feet, and Miles is not even close. So my plan is to just knit until I run out of yarn, but I expect it will be like a 3.5 or 4 foot scarf, which is totally fine because, again, he is 4. He doesn't need a scarf that would basically trail on the ground. So, excuse me. So that is the project this week. It is a super simple knit. I did go ahead and stick stitch markers in there so that I would be aware of which side was the right side and when to knit the panel, because I just foresaw that if I didn't, I would constantly be ripping back to fix things. And the scarf will definitely need a block because, as you can see, the garter stitch is a little bit scrunchier than the ribbed section, but I will just give all of those items a blocking when I am done. So the goal this week is to finish this, and that means basically Miles' winter set will be done, and then I will have to investigate yarn for Roxy's set. I should also note I am trying something a little bit different. I am using Collage Square needles, I should say single points with these straights. I almost never use straights. I have come to love circulars over the years, and I find that when I knit with straights, the problem is that I drop the needle that I'm holding when I get to the end of the row, which is basically what I do with my circular needles. But the needles don't actually fall with my circular needles because the project is just in my lap. So I drop them and then I switch them, and I have to be careful not to drop them. I decided to use these because in all fairness, and full disclosure, they are a client of mine, and so they sent me a bunch of different kinds of needles to try, and I thought it would be a good thing to do to try the wares so that when I am writing marketing pieces about them, I can talk about them. The needles are very similar to their others. They are anodized aluminum, and they have the needle size etched into them so it won't rub off, so you can always tell what they are and you don't need to use a needle gauge. So I am enjoying this project, and I think it's simple and kind of mindless, and it's perfect for in the evenings when I am done spinning and just want to knit a little bit. I am spending most of my time spinning because, of course, it is the Tour de Fleece, but I'm not quite done talking to you about knits, so let's talk about those and then we'll move on. So the other thing that I have sort of been doing in the wings, and I haven't really talked about it, nor have I shown you, is for my birthday, a friend of mine, well, I should say, a friend of mine got a circular sock knitting machine recently. And if you're not familiar with those, they are sort of what it sounds like. It is a circular machine that will basically knit socks for you. At its simplest, it will knit tubes. It is basically it's got needles and gears, and you thread your yarn around it and it creates the loops so that you can knit tubes. Now, circular sock knitting machines also come with additional components which can allow you to do the ribbed cuffs and potentially also turn the heels. But she's learning, and I also know lots of people who don't like to fiddle with those. And so what a lot of people do is they crank tubes of sock yarn and then they pull them off and they go ahead and cut them in half and create socks out of them, and then you just knit the cuff at the top, the toe at the bottom, and then you cut in where you can appropriately place a heel. So I have been experimenting with this. I had a little trouble conceptualizing exactly how it would work, in part because knitting is sort of unidirectional. For instance, if you've ever tried knitting and you've started at the bottom and finished knitting something at the top, you know that if you drop a stitch or if you try and rip out from the top of whatever you've been knitting, it's super, super easy. You just give a rip and all the stitches come right out. However, if you try and pull from the bottom of the stitches, they do not come out as easily because the yarn sort of is in a different configuration and is not, I don't know how to explain it, but it's unidirectional. So the concept that I was having trouble with was, if you have a tube of knitting that goes all in one direction and you start cutting and piecing, how do you pick up to knit in the opposite direction, and how does that change things? So I know that's kind of complicated conceptually, but basically my friend sent me a big long tube, and I do not know what this yarn is. She had lost the tag, so it is a really pretty, it's probably a somewhat floral, although it also reminds me a little bit of Christmas yarn, even though I don't think it is. It's got reds and pinks and greens and some grays in it. So it's super pretty, it's variegated, but it kind of comes out slightly subtly striping. This is a 64-inch sock tube, which admittedly 64 inches is usually a little bit big for my socks, although this is actually fairly dense, so I don't know how difficult this will be to, or how big it will be, and it looks like it's coming out at about 8 stitches per the inch. So I haven't completely measured, but so this is kind of the leftover sock tube, and she sent me the entire skein cranked and had used some pink waste yarn on either end. And when she sent this to me as a present, she also sent me a skein of Yagi Shawl, which is a German sock yarn, and they come in little skeins. They come in 50-gram skeins of about 200 yards, and the thing that they're known for is inside the skein there is always a tube of reinforcement thread. I don't think I have that. I do not. Oh, I do. Inside the skein there is always a little spindle, thread bobbin of a single, well, it's not a single ply, it looks like it is plied, but a more thread weight of the exact matching fiber, and these are to be held, if you want to use them, they can be held double with the sock yarn for your heels to create a more durable heel. So she sent me a skein of red Shawl to use with these, and basically she cranked the whole skein into the tube. Some people like to do that. Some people also like to crank like 3/4 or 80% of the skein and then save the 20% to do heels and toes. Anyway, suffice to say, the tube was really, really long, and because my feet are so short, if I folded it in half, I'd have probably knee socks, and my concern was that as my calves grow, the socks might be really tight because they're all 64 stitches, and I didn't want to rip back and whatever. So I took approximate lengths for socks for myself. And this past week, I knit the cuffs at the top and the toes at the bottom. So now I have basically tube socks, and the plan is that this week I am going to cut heels in them. So I will measure, I will put them on my foot and measure where I want to put my heel in. My guess is somewhere around here. And then I will snip a thread and I will put in an afterthought heel. I am going to try using a method I don't know that she invented it, but she did do a nice video about it. A method used by Kirby Werby. And if you, she is Kirby Werby on Instagram, and she also sells yarn. But if you Google on YouTube Kirby Werby Afterthought Heel, there's an 11-minute video that you can watch. And so my goal this week is to cut heels into these. Now, if I'm counting these for Stash Dash, I am only counting the part that I knitted. So I will measure the red skein of jowl when I'm done and figure out how many yards. My guess is probably between 25 and 50 by the time I'm done. But it's kind of fun to have an almost instant pair of socks. So that is what I have been learning to do, and I will take some photos and post that on Instagram, and I will link the tutorial that I'm going to use in the show notes in case you want to do it. And now I have the rest of this left over. Actually, since I was talking about the fact that this is kind of Christmassy yarns, and I don't know whether I think that because it's on my brain, because we're doing the Christmas in July Cal, or if I just thought it really looked like that, I think I'm going to save this yarn. I have been saving leftovers of Christmas sock skeins for a while now, and I am thinking about doing some kind of a maybe lap blanket project at some point with Christmas yarns and Christmas colors. So I'm going to save this and use it for that, and I will also have some fun socks. And of course, these socks are going really fast because I'm not doing the bulk of the knitting. So that is another project to work on this week along with Miles' scarf. Let's talk. So I talked about how we are having a Christmas sock knit along. And the funny thing is that I had the perfect skein of sock yarn in mind, and of course I can't find it when I want it. I know I ordered it this past December, and I remember it coming in, and I have no idea where I put it. So, but never fear, I went through my stash and found something else. So this is not exactly traditionally what I think of when I think of Christmas yarn. However, in a minute, I will tell you what the name of the colorway is, and then you will understand. So these are two skeins of fat sock, and that is a superwash merino, 170 yards to 2.5 ounces. It seems like it's roughly a sport weight, and these are from Hello Yarn. It is a base that she dyes, and it is super squishy and lovely. I have had skeins of it before. I have never turned it into socks for myself. The last couple skeins that I had, I turned into a wonderfully squishy baby sweater. But when she had these, I couldn't resist. They are plummy colored with a little bit of cream and brown, and the reason I think they apply for Christmas is because they are called fruitcake. So I believe these came out around the holiday time, so I am going to knit myself some fruitcake socks, and the only thing that I haven't decided yet is each skein, like I said, is 170 yards, and what I haven't decided is whether I am going to wind them up and knit from the toe up, which I don't normally do. I usually knit top down, but if I knit from the toe up, I could just knit until I ran out of yarn and make these. They probably would be not full knee socks, but I could probably go up further. So I haven't decided if I'm going to do that or if I'm just going to do the easy knit them from the top down, the way I knit all my socks, and then just enjoy them. You know, because they are separate skeins and because I could use all of it, I'm thinking about doing toe up. And I would do toe up with a heel gusset. I would probably use David Schultz's toe up sock recipe to do it, but I just can't decide. But these are my fruitcake socks. I'm going to start them at some point this month, and I will be knitting along with you. I have not decided on a prize yet. I've been racking up my brain for what I want to do. Part of me thought that I would try and come up with another skein of Christmas yarn and send it to you, but then I wasn't sure if knitting up a pair of Christmas socks, it would be that much fun to receive a Christmas package. And I was like, oh, it would be kind of fun. I could do a whole Christmas in July, but of course I can't get Christmas candy right now, so I wasn't sure. So I haven't decided yet. It might be hand spun, it might be fiber, it might be yarn. I don't know. It will be something. But these are going to be my fruitcake socks for the Christmas in July knit along. The final yarn that I brought this week is something that I ordered well over a month ago, and it arrived this week, and well, I guess it arrived this past weekend, and I am dying to cast it on, and I don't know if I'm going to do it right now, but I kind of want to, so I might. So, I don't know how many of you are familiar with Kim Dye's yarn. She is an indie dyer who has been heavily featured in the BIPOC in Fiber and other places, and I've actually never tried her yarn, but she has this really cool program that she has been particularly promoting during the coronavirus epidemic, which is every month she picks 2 colors that she decides to dye for the month, and she calls them her community colors. I think that's what she called them. And basically, you can only get them if you pre-order through a local yarn store. And so she helps at local yarn stores because she is giving them the business in this time rather than having people order direct from her. And also she does the pre-orders so she knows exactly how much to dye. So it's not specifically an exclusive thing. You can find yarn stores. My local yarn store happens to be a Kim Dye's Community Project store. So for instance, if you cannot find a store near you that carries them, you can check out Yarn Social on Instagram and in Kansas City, Missouri, and you can place an order through them for the community dye yarns. And so what happens is basically, I believe this came out at the end of May, and you had a week or 2 to place your orders towards the end of May for the June colors, and then the June colors are delivered at the end of June because Kim spends the month dyeing up the orders that she has received. And so there are also some beautiful colors for July. I'm not sure if orders are still open. I guess orders might still be open for a few more days for July. It was a chocolate cherry colorway and a really beautiful, like bright purple grape colorway. So if you want to check it out, check out Kim Dye's Yarn on Instagram, or like I said, you can go look at your local yarn store or Yarn Social, and this is just a really great thing she's been doing to support the local yarn stores. So she's been doing this for several months, and the first month or 2 that I saw it, I don't know, they just, you know, not everything is your colors, and you don't get to choose from any colors. It's only the 2 colors of the month. And so I looked at it and said, I definitely want to support this. I am going to wait for a month that has colors that I really want, and then I will sign up. And, you know, unfortunately that turns out to be lots of months. But, so June was the first set of colors that I really liked, and they are kind of crazy, but they are summer-inspired colorways, and they are these. So they were dyed on her sparkle base this month. They were available in DK or I think fingering, and I got the DK, and this is called Fireflies at Play, and so it is dark blues, kind of like the evening skies with little bits of yellow, and then of course a lot of sparkle in it. So this is Fireflies at Play, and this is Bioluminescence. And these are both Sparkle DK 80/20 Superwash Merino Nylon, 100 grams, 231 yards each. And so I am going to, these were the coordinating colors, and I am going to use them together in a cowl project. And I cannot remember, I think it is, I cannot remember the name of it. It is one of the most recent cowl patterns. It was a cowl and a shawl, and I want to do the cowl, and I believe the shawl was called Coco. The Japanese translation is Lips, and it was designed by Olga Jazzy, or Olga Jazzy Knits. And so I saw someone else knit the cowl, and it's a really interesting textural cowl, and the way you knit the textures make it look like lips kind of burgeoning out from your knitting. And so I am going to knit that cowl. This will be the background color, and I think this will be the lips. And it's going to be bright and crazy, and in a lot of ways not me, but I'm super, super excited about it. So because this came in the mail, and because I can't resist new projects, this will probably get cast on. It may not get cast on this week because I may continue to work on some of my other things this week. However, this is probably next on the needles. I know I talked about picking up some whips. I still will do that, but this might be a fun short project for me that I do. So that's a lot about the knits in a time when we're working on Tour de Fleece, huh? So, as I said, Tour de Fleece started on Saturday. You know what? I forgot another thing. I can't believe how many things I forgot. I didn't bring my crochet blanket. I didn't bring my most recent completed spin. I'm just going to keep going. I will show the things to you next week. So, I did finish the spin I was working on last week, which was Windswept. It came out to be a beautifully neutral skein. It is dry, and I need to weigh it and take photos and get it up in the Etsy shop, and so you will see it on my Instagram feed this week, and I will bring it to show you next week. So, since Saturday, I finished that one. I plied it up on Friday so that my wheels were clear so that I could start spinning for Tour de Fleece. The first project that I started spinning, and I am half done, is I spun a braid of 2 If by Hand in the colorway Prim. This is a superwash merino nylon. This is only a little bit of what's left. It was a 4-ounce braid, and I spun 2 ounces on Saturday, and so I have 2 ounces to spin this evening, and then hopefully I will apply it tomorrow. This is beautiful fiber. I miss them terribly. They stopped dyeing a few years ago. It was, well, throughout the history, I believe there were 3 people. It was 2 people, and then 1 left and another joined, and they dyed beautiful fiber, and I love it, and I only have a few braids left that I have been hoarding, but I loved their bright color sense, and their fiber prep was impeccable. This is super soft and lovely to draft, and so I have another 2 ounces of this to finish this evening, and then I will apply it. I'm spinning it in small strips for kind of maximum overall color, so it will be beautiful and barber poled, and this one will go up in my shop. So if this is something you think suits your fancy, it will probably go up sometime later this week. I need to finish spinning and plying, wash it, and then it will go into the shop. So the second thing that I spun was yesterday. I actually spun probably 4 ounces or a little over. I had showed you a bag full of bats and rologs and all kinds of things that I had collected from some friends. And yesterday my spinning group met virtually. I know I've talked about it one Sunday a month. Quite a few of us from various parts of Kansas usually get together for spinning at someone's house. But of course, COVID has completely negated that. We haven't met. I think the last time we met was January. No, we met in February, I guess, but that was the last time we met. And one of the members suggested that we have a virtual spinning meeting on Zoom. So I did a virtual spinning meeting for 4 hours yesterday and almost finished all the fiber that I had in this package, and then I finished the rest of it today. So like I said, this was a bunch of rologs made by a friend of mine, plus some bats that were, or a bat that was sent to me with some stuff that I ordered. And you can't see all of it. You might be able to see it a little bit more in here. It's all blues and purples and mauves, and then a little bit of brown. So you've got like a little bit of pink in here, a little bit of blues. You've got all kinds of things. It's kind of deceptive because the last 2 rologs that I spun on top were kind of the blue pinky ones. There's purple, there's Firestar, there's Angelina, there's all kinds of things in here. So I don't know what I'm going to do with this. It will not go in my shop primarily because I can't tell you what's in it. I don't know what the fiber makeup was of a lot of the things that I put into this bobbin, and so Etsy requires you to disclose what fibers are in there, and so I don't know. I couldn't tell you in terms of allergens. I couldn't tell you how it would wear. I could tell you I would not machine wash it, but that's about it. So this one will not go in the shop. This one is just kind of a fun spin. I have no idea what it's going to be beyond yarn, but this one is also done. So my plan is to spin more singles tonight and then hopefully apply both sets of 4 ounces tomorrow night. And then I can start another braid, which means the tour is off to a screaming start for me because if I actually spin 8 ounces of fiber in 3 or 4 days, that's pretty freaking amazing. And it means that I'm going to have to dig through my stash to find more things to spin. So those are the spins that I'm working on. And I don't know what's next. I will pick something from what I showed you. I have 2 braids of Hello Yarn in the same colorway so that I can do kind of a bigger spin. And then I also have a 6-ounce braid from Fat Cat Knits still. So that will probably not last me through the next couple weeks, but yeah. The final thing that I did, and it is fiber related, so I just thought I would show you. I know this is a long podcast and I even forgot stuff. The final thing that I did this week is about well, it's got to be over a month ago now, my husband finished a jar of pickled beets. He loves those things. I cannot stand them. But he finished the jar of pickled beets, and the jar was still between half and 2/3 full of the liquid, the pickling brine that the beets were in. And it was this bright, gorgeous, beautiful purple. And I do know that you can naturally dye with plants. And so I looked at him and said, would you just leave that in the fridge and I will dye something with it? And then a few weeks later, we bought a red cabbage and we chopped it up and we put it in some vinegar to pickle it for dinner. And that jar turned kind of beautifully red and purple because of the red cabbage. And so when we were done, I looked at them and I said, you know, those are both vegetable plant matter that could be used in dye stocks, and they're basically in vinegar solutions. So I could use those for dyeing. And so we combined them into one jar, and the jar sat in the fridge at the back of the fridge for weeks and weeks, and Wes kept asking me if I was going to do anything about it. So yesterday I went ahead and took some fiber that I have. I have a couple bags of, it's just Louette Superwash Merino from back in the day. I think I received them as a prize for spinning on a Spinzilla team, and I just haven't dyed them. And so I went ahead and pulled a little bit of that roving. I pulled probably, my guess is between 1 ounce and 2 ounces. I didn't weigh it. I just pulled a length of fiber. And the reason that I pulled so little is because I had this 16-ounce jar of vinegar waste that produce had sat in, but I wasn't sure how much actual dye stock was really in there because it was just the remnants of what had sort of bled out of the vegetables. It wasn't the vegetables themselves. And so I decided to see what I could do on my stovetop. Part of the reason I don't dye with, I have dyed with acid dyes, but I don't dye with acid dyes in my home, mainly because I haven't wanted to invest in the dye stock, and I haven't wanted to invest in different cookware and places to dye that are not my kitchen, so that I don't have to worry about cross-contamination. I like dyeing with food colors. I've dyed with Kool-Aid, and I don't mind dyeing with things like beet juice because they are food prep. They are food safe, obviously, because they are food. So I can cook them on my stovetop in my regular stove pans and just wash them when I'm done, and I'm good to go. So from what I knew about dyeing, I knew that often with animal fibers, and of course what I had was superwash merino wool. There is no nylon in it, it's just superwash merino. I knew that vinegar or citric acid helps acid dyes and things like Kool-Aid set. I didn't pay a lot of attention to the fact that a lot of natural dyes require mordants. And so kind of okay, let me talk about what I did. I took my 1.5 ounces of fiber and I put it in one of my, I think it's my 5-quart saucepan, not saucepan, like a soup pot. And I filled the pot with water and I dunked the fiber in and let it soak for about 20 minutes. Now, as it turns out, I probably should have added a mordant to that, and we'll talk about that in a minute. A mordant is just a chemical that helps the dye set. And there are a variety of things that do that depending on what it is that you're dyeing with, and I'll get to that in a minute. So I probably should have done that, but mostly I just let the fiber soak and prepare. Then I drained most of that water off because I didn't want to dilute the vinegar and the dye stock that I had, and then I poured, it was an almost full 16-ounce jar of basically vinegar brine with leftover colors leached from the food in it, and I poured it into the pan, and it was just a really bright red. And I poured it over the fiber, and then I turned on the stove, and I turned it on very low to a simmer because you do not want to boil your fiber. Although this is superwash merino, so I don't know how badly I could felt it, I certainly didn't want to change the fiber, and you always want to be careful when you are heating fiber because agitation and heat create felting, and you can very, very easily felt your braid. So you want to be sure not to agitate too much. So I had, like I said, I had thoroughly soaked my fiber, and then I went ahead and poured my dye stock in. And if you look, there is a photo on Instagram of the pot with the dye stock, and it is a really, really dark color, and immediately the fiber started to kind of look the color. And so I went ahead and let that simmer for about a half an hour. And then, just for good measure, I decided to add a few glugs of vinegar, just because I wanted to add a little bit extra of the vinegar to make sure the color set. And when I poured the vinegar in, it looked like the color on the fiber dispersed. And I thought, oh dear, I wonder if natural dyes don't stick to animal fibers with vinegar, if there is something else I should be using. And that is when I Googled to see what kind of mordants I should be using. And it turns out that to dye with beets, they often recommend that you use something called alum. And alum is a metal salt. It is actually sold at the grocery store. I think it is used for alum baths. And I think it is used to reduce potentially skin inflammation and irritation. So you would potentially take a bath if you had a sunburn or a skin irritation. Now, don't take 100% my word for that. I am not a doctor. I am not dispensing medical advice. However, when I looked at the ingredients, some of the things they talked about is it's a metallic salt, and one of the things they likened it to was cream of tartar. And of course, I have some cream of tartar in the pantry because I bake. So I decided that for good measure, after I added the vinegar, I went ahead and sprinkled some salt in the pot. Of course, it is not a metal salt, it's just my standard table salt, but I went ahead and sprinkled a little salt in the pot, and then I went ahead and actually what I sprinkled was baking powder, which has cream of tartar in it. And so I sprinkled a little bit of that in the pot, and it fizzed a little bit, and then I went ahead and let it simmer for another half an hour. Basically, the recommendations for beets were to use 4 times as much dye stock as you have fiber, and let it simmer for about an hour with the alum in there. So I let mine simmer for about an hour, and then I let it cool for several hours until it was like 100% back to room temperature. And then I went ahead and rinsed it. So after all this talk, are you curious to see what I got? So, dyeing with natural dyes often results in, dyeing with natural dyes is very tricky. First of all, it doesn't necessarily come out the same every time because it is incredibly affected by what precisely you're using as your dye stock, what you're using as your mordant, what the status is of your water, and a variety, how much heat you're adding, how long you're letting it sit, etc. I did not have a lot of dye stock because I didn't actually have the plant or vegetable matter that had the color in it. I just had what had leached out of it into the vinegar. So I knew I was going to end up with something pretty pale. And I will say that it is hard to get really bright colors with natural dyes. That doesn't mean it doesn't happen. Indigo is an example where you can get really dark colors. You can also get really dark reds with cochineal. So there are lots of things you can do, and I am just at the very, very tip, and I am just dabbling in this. But what I got was kind of a peachy pinky, and what you can't see, it's really hard to see, I can only see it because I'm looking at it in person, is there are spots that are peachier and there are spots that are pinkier. So it is a really, really pale bit, and like I said, I just did a little bit of fiber, but I'm going to spin this up during Tour de Fleece because why not? I have it dyed and I'm curious to see what it will look like when it's spun up. But this is my yarn dyed in leftover beet juice and cabbage juice, and just to show you a few things that you can do if you want to experiment in your kitchen. So that was a lot. It's been over 40 minutes. I can't remember the last time I did an episode that was that long. Thank you for sticking it out with me. I hope maybe some of you are watching while you're spinning and I'm keeping you entertained. There's a lot going on here and I didn't even show you everything. I have moved into new colors. I've started the purples on the crochet, and I have, like I said, another hand spun that I didn't even show you. So I hope you have enjoyed this episode. If this is your first time, I'm not usually quite this verbose, but thanks for hanging out and I hope you'll be back. If you are a returning viewer, thanks for spending more time with me. I really enjoy chatting with you. I hope that you are having a lovely week or as best as you can, and that you are finding some joy in your crafting. If you are interested in joining either of my craft alongs, the spin along or the knit crochet along, please come over to the Ravelry group and come join us. My group is loose on rules. All you have to do is join the group and be a member to potentially be eligible for prizes, and we would love to see you over there. So I will say until I see you next time, happy knitting, happy spinning, happy sipping, and I'll see you next week. Bye.